yeah, because this is totally going to be accurate. This guy's going to have all the reasons.
Reason number 1. The Spider-Man Trilogy films had Peter spitting webbing out of his wrists. If Peter Parker truly exhibited the traits of a spider, it would make more sense for him to spit webbing out of his butt. In Spider-Man Homecoming, he had web shooters instead, which is a better idea.
Whew, we're already starting things strong here. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the argument of whether web shooters or organic webbing is better, because at the end of the day, there's pros and cons for each system. But to argue that one film is objectively better because it has the other is kind of ridiculous. Especially since the Raimi web shooters actually inspired a comic arc in the, Marvel Comics known as The Other, where Spider-Man gets killed by this vampire-esque creature and is reborn with organic web shooters, which pays homage to the Raimi trilogy. So you can't really argue that the organic web shooters are terrible, because they literally helped inspire a complete different comic run within the comics themselves. Whether one is better than the other, that's entirely up to you. I'm not going to stop you. But to say that one film is objectively better because of that is very wrong and not good in the slightest.
Reason number 2. Not every terrorist is an ex-scientist or a victim of a science experiment gone wrong. The villains in the Sam Raimi trilogy are all science experiments gone wrong. But in Spider-Man Homecoming, Vulture is a regular blue-collar worker with motives that seem much more realistic.
Ah yes, the villains in the Sam Raimi trilogy. For there were only 3. Did he watch Spider-Man 3? I genuinely don't think he did. I don't think he watched the Raimi trilogy, to be honest, because if he did, you'd know that there were actually 5 Spider-Man villains. Green Goblin, Doc Ock, Sandman, New Goblin, and of course Venom. Only 3 of those, you could argue, are science experiments gone wrong. In fact, you actually can't argue that they're science experiments gone wrong, because, one of them is an alien. One of them was a science experiment gone right, because Harry Osborn literally took the Green Goblin serum to get back at Peter and to kill him for, he believed he killed his father. Doc Ock was a science experiment gone right. It was merely circumstance that caused him to turn into a villain. And Sandman was also a science experiment gone right. It was mainly just circumstance that he was in the area. He wasn't supposed to be there. It was just an accident, a twist of fate, a random incident. The only one you can even argue is an experiment gone wrong is Norman Osborn, but even then you could argue it's an experiment gone right, considering literally in the testing for the performance enhancers, the side effects were literally violence, aggression, and insanity. Those traits were passed on to Norman Osborn. The experiment went right. It's just that the experiment itself was dodgy, that's all. Like, what the fuck is he on about? Oh yeah, and Vulture is clearly more realistic. A dude who cleans up after the mess of superheroes and actually steals alien technology to commit crimes, very realistic right there, lads.
Reason number 3. It never made sense why Peter Parker would choose the career of being a photographer for the Daily Bugle in Sam Raimi's trilogy. The newspaper's business has been in a steady decline since 2001, and the first Spider-Man film was released a year after the dip. Peter Parker is smarter in Spider-Man Homecoming and makes his money through Google AdSense by posting his footage online.
Yeah, that's a load of bullshit. The newspaper industry has been in the decline since the 1950s with the introduction of televisions into people's homes, okay? It hasn't been on the decline since just the year 2001. That is a misconception, as you can clearly see from this graph here, which only shows the statistics in the United States from 1985 onwards. You can clearly see here the sharp decline took place around 2005-2007, which, that takes place between the events of Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3. So realistically, you can't make the argument of, oh, it doesn't make sense for Peter Parker to be a photographer. The newspaper business is on the decline. It's literally been on the decline since before Spider-Man was a thing, so you can eat a dick, sir.
Reason number 4. This is the first Spider-Man movie where the villain doesn't talk to himself. He eventually gets sent to prison, while the other crazy people that talk to themselves in the Sam Raimi trilogy die. Which is a good thing, since they would never be sent to prison for their crimes, since they'd be able to plead insanity, crediting their crimes to the voices in their heads.
Again, this motherfucker clearly hasn't watched Spider-Man 3, because Sandman and Venom do not talk to themselves. Neither one of them has insanity. You could argue Venom is not all that mentally there, but neither one of them talk to themselves, so I don't really know where he's going with this. Also, you can't really make the argument that Doc Ock talks to himself either, because he literally has 4 mechanical AIs in his head. He's clearly talking to them. Like, what the fuck is he on about? The only one you could argue is talking to himself, once again, is Norman Osborn, since Harry is effectively talking to, the Green Goblin, who is his twisted perception of his father. So, I mean, yeah, like Adrian Toomes goes to prison, that's pretty realistic, but let's be honest, most of these guys, if not all of them, deserve death sentences. Maybe not Adrian Toomes, because, I mean, he does kill someone in the film, but, like, I don't really know where he's going with this. Like, pretty much all of these guys deserve harsh sentences, if not death, so I don't know where he's going with that.
Reason number 5. Peter Parker's spider sense is straight caca. Every mentor he chooses turns out to be a villain in Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. Norman becomes the Green Goblin, Dr. Octavius becomes Doc Ock, Dr. Connors with the missing arm will eventually become the Lizard, and the symbiote causes Peter to become the bad guy. In Spider-Man Homecoming, his mentor Tony Stark actually teaches him a thing or two on what it really means to be a hero.
I won't lie, this is a valid point. I don't see how, I think it is very, very, very unlikely that, literally every single mentor figure you have would turn out to be a supervillain. I think he's right in that sense, but where I disagree is two things. One, Dr. Connors never becomes the Lizard in, the Raimi films. He becomes it in the games, but the games aren't canon. If he's referring to the Mark Webb Spider-Man, those are two different universes. Even though they're both technically now in the MCU, it's still different verses. And secondly, the symbiote is never a mentor figure to Peter. He's basically he's nothing more than a metaphor for drug abuse or alcohol addiction. That's basically what the symbiote is. If you imply that that's a mentor figure, then that speaks a lot about you as a person. And I won't lie, his comment about Tony Stark is correct. He does teach him a thing or two about what it means to be a hero. But Tony Stark was a villain before he became Iron Man, so it's not like Tony Stark is squeaky clean, He's not the perfect mentor figure, as he himself has issues. He's the best mentor figure Peter could have, but it is what it is. He's not entirely correct about this. Some information is not quite right.
Reason number 6. It seems like everyone in the Spider-Man trilogy has daddy issues. Peter doesn't have a daddy or uncle. Harry has a daddy who hates him, and this same dad haunts him for the rest of the trilogy.
I look at these words, and it's like my father wrote them.
Mary Jane has a daddy who yells a lot, and Gwen Stacy's dad is disengaged and doesn't even know who she's dating. Only 2 people really have daddy issues in this movie, if you want to include Iron Man. I'm not even sure you want to include Vulture's daughter, because he only kills and steals to afford a better life for his wife and daughter.
I know, it's almost as if the Raimi films are accurate representations of the comic counterparts. Wow, shocker. Also, further proof he didn't watch Spider-Man 3 because Gwen Stacy was never dating Eddie Brock. That was just some fan fiction he created in his head. But, I don't understand how this is, a criticism as to why one film is objectively better than the other. And you're going to see a trend, if you haven't already, with just random gripes this guy has with the films. And to be fair, you need to nitpick to argue that these films are worse than Spider-Man Homecoming. Better fathers? What the fuck is he on about? Literally, not everyone has perfect families. What are you on about? Sorry that, everyone in real life also doesn't have perfect families. People have daddy issues, people have mum issues, people have brother issues. It doesn't matter. Just shut up.
Reason number 7. The point of origin stories is to find out how a hero becomes a hero. They dropped the ball in the Sam Raimi trilogy because Peter is already fully experienced in web slinging midway through the movie. You'll appreciate Peter more in Spider-Man Homecoming because he never fully gets the hang of his powers and probably won't until the end of this trilogy.
Okay, so now I'm wondering whether he watched the Spider-Man trilogy at all, considering in the very first Spider-Man film, it's explained that, Spider-Man's been doing his thing for weeks before Peter even becomes a photographer for the Daily Bugle. So I don't really know what to say there. It's literally explained that off-screen, Spider-Man's already been doing his thing for a long-ass time, and people have started to notice. Hell, there's literally a montage of, what the citizens of New York City think of Spider-Man, so I don't know what to say. He's literally made a name for himself in that short time span off-screen, so you clearly didn't watch the film. And it's not like he's a perfect fighter, yeah, he's good at web slinging, but he's hardly the perfect fighter, as Green Goblin completely kicks his ass. So I don't know what to say to this.
Reason number 8. I can't stand when Hollywood doesn't hire based on the character's attributes. There's a love interest with dyed hair in all the Sam Raimi films. Just hire a real blonde or hire a real redhead. All the girls in this movie wear their hair natural.
Oh yeah, let's not talk about, acting talent, credentials, history, experience, none of that. Just hire natural redheads, Because when they were filming Avatar, they hired real aliens with blue skin. Or when they hired Bruce Banner, they hired a guy that can literally transform into a 8-foot green-skinned monster. Or when they've made Titanic, they literally hired people that were like 100 plus years old, you know, like, let's not talk about, you know...
It never made sense how, even though Peter was a loser in school, all the prettiest girls in the franchise were attracted to him. This never happens in real life. The pretty girls in Spider-Man Homecoming find Peter attractive for the same reasons everyone else in school thinks he's a loser. They like him because of his brains, since they're geniuses too. And they like him because he's awkward, because they're awkward and could relate.
Oh wow, just more proof that he didn't watch the Spider-Man films, because if you did, then you'd know that MJ likes Peter because, quote-unquote, she made him feel, you know, better than anyone else has ever done in her life, you know? And it was at the end of Spider-Man 1 that she realized she wasn't in love with Spider-Man, she was in love with Peter Parker because of the figure that he was to her. You know, let's not talk about any of that, you know, it's clearly shallow. You know, Gwen Stacy, it's not like she loves him because he's literally a mentor figure to her in, like, the science class that they're in at their university, you know, none of that, you know. Ursula, you know, the roommate with, you know, Mr. Dickovich, it's not like she likes him because she's literally the most awkward, innocent girl known to man, and he's, you know, awkward as well. You know, let's just not talk about any of that, you know, clearly doesn't matter. Fucking idiot.
Reason number 10. It was always kind of awkward watching Spider-Man take advantage of the hotties in the trilogy. He would kiss them knowing good and well they wouldn't have kissed him if they knew he was Peter Parker. There's no kissing scenes in Spider-Man Homecoming because this Peter Parker has morals.
Spider-Man in the Raimi Trilogy has no moral. What the fuck is this video? Why am I doing this? I could be sleeping or I could be at the gym. But like, he literally contradicts himself because he's like, oh, all the girls love Peter Parker and that's unrealistic, yet apparently he takes advantage of them as Spider-Man? Like, what? Did he, like, watch this when he was making it? Like, how do you contradict yourself literally 2 points apart?
Speaking of hotties, Aunt May is fine in this movie.
This is not an objective list. This is objectively wrong is what it is. You know, let's just not talk about how the Aunt May in the Sam Raimi's trilogy literally gives him so much inspirational advice. She teaches him life lessons, you know, all of that. Let's not talk about how the Aunt May in Homecoming was literally so useless as a mentor figure that they had to retcon Uncle Ben's death in No Way Home in order to give her, like, any mentor figure-ness to him at all. Like, oh no, it doesn't matter, guys. She might have no personality, but at least she's hot.
Reason number 12. There's a funeral scene in every film in the Spider-Man trilogy. What type of hero lets that much people die annually like that? It sucks that the MCU is allergic to killing meaningful characters, but it was refreshing to see a Spider-Man film without a funeral scene for once.
Once again, if you actually watched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, you'd know that there's actually 2 funeral scenes, one for Norman Osborn and one for Harry Osborn. The scene in Spider-Man 2 you're referring to is not a cemetery, is not a funeral. It's just a scene that takes place at a cemetery and it lasts for like 15 seconds. Like, what are you complaining about? It's literally it's literally like Peter and Aunt May visiting their loved ones and paying respect. How is that a bad thing? That's a good thing.
Reason number 13. This is the first Spider-Man film where they don't throw Uncle Ben's death all in your face. Collectively, Uncle Ben had more screen time in the Sam Raimi franchise than Venom did, and that's a crime. In Spider-Man Homecoming, they only mention him by name because nobody's interested in his storyline.
Correction. You are not interested in his storyline. I agree, Uncle Ben had a bit too much screen time in the Raimi films. However, it's not like this is the most important character in the Spider-Man canon when it comes to, you know, why Peter is Spider-Man. You know, it's not like that exists. Not to mention, there's really interesting ways of doing Uncle Ben in Spider-Man media. The most prominent example off the top of my head is in Spectacular Spider-Man, when, you know, Peter is literally wrestling with himself, you know, due to the symbiote controlling him. You know, this symbiote literally takes over his life, and it's literally the devil and the angel on his shoulder. You've got the symbiote as the devil and Uncle Ben as the angel, and I think that scene worked really well in displaying not just Spider-Man's morals, but also the reason he became Spider-Man in the first place. So I don't think it's an objective issue. I think it's just the way they did it that, you know, turned a few viewers off. Evidently you didn't like it. I personally didn't mind it. It's not an objective issue though.
The storylines we are interested in is the Avengers. That's why it's awesome that Spidey's universe is meshed with the MCU this time around. Sony only had the right to the Spider-Man catalog in these films. Although Spidey is the most popular Marvel character, it gets dull watching a film centered around one superhero. The X-Men films are always better than standalone Wolverine films, and the MCU ensemble films are always better than the standalones.
I want him to make a review as to why Dark Phoenix is a better film than Logan. Because according to him, you know, the X-Men films are better than the Wolverine ones, no exceptions. I want him to make a video as to why Dark Phoenix is better than Logan. I want him to make a video as to why X-Men The Last Stand is better than Logan. I want him to make a video as to why Joss Whedon's Justice League is better than The Dark Knight. I want him to make a video as to... Basically what I'm saying is he doesn't know what he's talking about. If Spider-Man became dull as a character to watch, then it wouldn't matter if you put him with, you know, team-ups or on his own. No one would watch his films. He's evidently not dull, and the representation of Spider-Man in the Raimi films wasn't dull to watch. It's just that you don't know what you're talking about.
Reason number 15. There's more diversity in this movie than a Crayola box.
So she's got jungle fever. They got jungle fever. We're in love.
People of color have never had any meaningful roles in the original Sony trilogy.
I know, it's almost as if diversity doesn't matter. What does matter is how the characters are written. You want further evidence? Look at Phase 4 of the MCU.
Reason number 16. I always thought it was weird that Spider-Man never ran out of buildings to web in these movies. It's like every building's a skyscraper. If I were the bad guys, I'd just commit crimes in the suburbs so Spidey couldn't chase me down. In this movie, there's actually a scene where Spidey runs out of buildings and has to foot it all the way to the bad guys.
And here we are with facts with the Gaming Rift. You want to know why Spider-Man doesn't run out of buildings to swing from in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man Trilogy? It's because it takes place in Manhattan. Do you know how many skyscrapers are in Manhattan? At least 7,000. You want to know how many skyscrapers there are in Queens, which is where Spider-Man, you know, Homecoming primarily takes place in? 36. So sock yourself with that counter-argument.
I was never a fan of how easy it is to be Spider-Man in this trilogy. The movie implies all you need to do is get bit by a spider, and as long as you work under 20 hours at your part-time job, you too could be an excellent vigilante. In this version, Peter got bit by the spider, but he's also great at science, so he creates his own webbing. He's also good at networking and makes friends with Stark, who gives him a suit that offers a competitive advantage. So it's more than just the bite that makes him Spider-Man. It's the whole package.
You know how in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, even with 2 years of experience under his belt, being Spider-Man literally tears Peter's life apart. I mean, his crush doesn't want anything to do with him, his best friend hates him, his aunt can't afford to pay her rent, he's failing at school, he's failing at his pizza delivery job, which means the only way he can earn money is by helping J. Jonah Jameson ruin his public persona as Spider-Man. The films don't imply at all that it's easy to become a good vigilante. In fact, they prove the opposite. And you would know that if you actually watched them.
Reason number 18. I swear Peter's relatives get attacked in every movie. Aunt May gets kidnapped, Uncle Ben gets shot, and a Jehovah's Witness knocks on Aunt May's door and forces her to accept Jesus Christ as her Lord and Savior. Marvel was smart enough to cut the scenes out of the movie where Aunt May was in danger because the audience doesn't really care about those elements, and they tend to drag the film.
I know, it's almost as if Peter keeps his secret that he's Spider-Man in order to try prevent those things from happening. It's just because the villains end up finding out that he's Spider-Man and so put his family in danger. Or in the case of Spider-Man 2, it's completely by chance that Aunt May was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The only reason Vulture didn't do that in Spider-Man Homecoming was because he literally found out right before he was planning on doing his massive heist. He literally found out like hours at best before that. And he literally threatened to destroy every part of Peter's life if he went after Toomes. The
It's gonna drag the
hypocrisy.
film. Reason number 19. New York's public transportation system sucks. There's a scene in every Spider-Man movie where Pete has to save the day. He's literally stretched thin and makes the letter T Jesus pose and always manages to save the day at the end. I like the fact he failed in Spider-Man Homecoming. It's like the MCU is telling the audience, this dude ain't Jesus. And you could appreciate the humanity in his character.
I'm sorry, but if you can't appreciate the humanity in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man's character, then you're not watching the film right. Like, you're watching the film with either your eyes closed or with headphones on. There's no way. Literally, this kind of goes back to his previous comment about how he prefers, films where, like, there's multiple superheroes in the same universe. Because from the Sam Raimi's Spider-Man public perspective, Spider-Man literally is the equivalent of Jesus. He can do things no one else can. He's incredibly strong. He's there at the right time to lower crime. Hell, in Spider-Man 2, there's literally a statistic where crime has gone up by like 75% in Spider-Man's absence. The dude literally is Jesus from the public perspective, and most of the public respects Spider-Man for that reason. He fails in Spider-Man Homecoming, and then it's like the established hero, Iron Man, comes in and saves the day, and instantly the spotlight's on him. It's no different. It's just that you don't like the spotlight being on Spider-Man for some reason, implying that that makes him more relatable. Even though the entire point of Spider-Man in the Raimi trilogy is it's literally just a kid doing the best he can with the cards he's dealt. So I don't know where you're going with this. Like, he's just going round in circles.
Reason number 20. The bullies in these movies are unrealistic. Jocks versus nerds was a thing during the Saved by the Bell era, but in this day and age, this Flash represents a more realistic bully. He picks at Peter because Peter has something that he wants and can obtain. Respect from the academic decathlon team. It feels real that Flash is a hater because he's just suffering from his own personal insecurities. The bullies in the trilogy are so fake. Flash wouldn't care about Peter in real life because he has friends, the prettiest girl in school, and the fastest car. Why is he worrying about Peter? Why is he worrying about Peter? Peter never shows up to work. I doubt he's going to beat you at photography, Eddie, if he's never there to compete.
I mean, as someone who was bullied during school, and I've no shame in admitting that, like, bullies come in like all shapes and sizes. It doesn't matter. Like saying, oh, jocks don't exist anymore. They really do. It's just that, there's other types of bullying that happens. I shouldn't have to explain this, but it's clear that this guy hasn't been bullied and he's just like making up some bullshit to try and get his fans to agree with him. But it's not right at all. Now, yes, both Homecoming and the Raimi trilogy do portray bullies very well. But you can clearly see that Flash Thompson, Eddie Brock, and, the Flash Thompson in Spider-Man Homecoming, they are not the same character. Bullying can take place in any form, and it doesn't make one film objectively better than the other.
Reason number 21. Spider-Man quit being Spider-Man in this franchise to focus on his personal life. That's selfish. He didn't have to quit on this movie because he's technically fine.
Yeah, he just didn't watch Spider-Man 2. It's pretty much that simple. Because if you did watch the film, the first hour of the film perfectly describes how Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man's life has gone to shit, Everyone in the film hates him. Like, Harry hates him, MJ hates him, his mentor figure Doc Ock grows to hate, Spider-Man as he keeps getting in his way. Literally everything about this motherfucker's life is going to shit. The fact that he wants to quit being Spider-Man, because being Spider-Man is literally the source of all of his problems, okay? So it would make sense for him to quit being Spider-Man so he could better his personal life. That's not being selfish, that's just a decision that a reasonable human being would make. Whereas Spider-Man in Spider-Man Homecoming literally quits because he loses the fancy-ass suit. Which contradicts his previous point about how, it's not just Peter that's being Spider-Man, it's the suit as well that makes the whole package. It's like bull fucking shit, It's a complete contradictory because Spider-Man was Spider-Man before he even met Tony Stark. It's just that Tony Stark gave him a cool-ass new suit with a fuck ton more toys to play with. But he should not have quit being Spider-Man. He only quits being Spider-Man because he loses the suit. That's literally it. He could still be Spider-Man and no one would care. In fact, he very much is Spider-Man at the end of the film, even though he doesn't get the suit back. So he quits for no reason, effectively. And you're implying that the Raimi Spider-Man is the selfish one.
Technically fired. Reason number 22. I know Spider-Man has heightened senses, but I think his blood pressure was heightened when he got bit by the spider too, because he is super emotional and cries for like 10% of the Sam Raimi movies. Sometimes he's even crying for no reason. This Peter Parker cries once, and that's because a building fell on top of him. All of us would cry at that point.
This is a common complaint that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films get. However, realistically, the only times he cries are at points in his life when literally any normal person would cry. Like, yeah, he cries quite a lot, but realistically, we would all cry at the same scenario. And saying that Tom Holland cries because a building gets dropped on him, you know who gets a part of a building dropped on him and his immediate response is to crack a joke? Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, so eat a dick, sir.
Reason number 23. No one notices how Peter is never around the same time Spider-Man is. It's like the Clark Kent syndrome. It's pretty obvious he's Spider-Man. Vulture has common sense and puts two and two together when he figures out Spider-Man's identity the first time they meet.
I mean, this is a load of bullshit because pretty much every single one of the villains in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy figures out he's Spider-Man. Green Goblin figures it out just by looking at a cut on Spider-Man's wrist. Like, if that isn't some top-tier detective work, I don't know what is. Adrian Toomes literally had to listen to Peter's voice and had to listen to a scenario where how Peter disappeared at their house in order to put two and two together. Like, what are you on about? He needed more information in order to figure out the truth. Norman Osborn literally looked at a cut on Spider-Man's wrist and put two and two together. Like, Doc Ock figured out he was Spider-Man eventually. You know, Sandman figured out he was Spider-Man. So Venom knew basically before he was even Venom. Like, and obviously Harry figured out before he became a villain. So this point is just complete bullshit.
Which is another thing I couldn't stand about the Sony movies. Whenever someone figures out Spider-Man's identity, they gotta die. Harry died, Doc Ock died, Eddie died, and the list goes on. So much people learned Spider-Man's identity in this movie and live to see another day.
Yeah, for those of you who've watched No Way Home, I shouldn't have to explain how that statement aged as well as cheese. Final review on the video, that was pretty terrible. Every single point was either satire, I hope it's satire anyways, or every point was just completely false and easily debunkable. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. This video is a solid E tier. For context, Danko's, Scarlet Witch Superman video was like A tier, so just let that sink in. But with that being said though guys, that is all from me for today, so if you enjoy more reactions stroke debunks from me, feel free to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss anything. Consider joining the Discord server, we'd love to have you here. That's all from me for today, so it's been Lewis of The Gaming Rift, and have a great rest of your day, guys.